My name is Sarah, and I'm 28 years old. For 7 years, I've been the family's holiday hero, spending hundreds of dollars on thoughtful gifts, organizing celebrations, and making sure everyone felt special. But last Christmas, when I called to plan our usual gathering, my mom delivered shocking news. "We've decided we don't celebrate holidays anymore. It's too stressful and expensive." I was heartbroken, but respected their decision. Then, 3 weeks later, I discovered the truth through a single Instagram post that changed everything. They hadn't stopped celebrating. They had just stopped including me. What they didn't know was that I had been documenting everything, and I was about to turn their own words against them in the most satisfying way possible. I have a story about the day I discovered my family had been lying to me for months and how I used their own deception to teach them the most valuable lesson they've ever learned. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. While my younger brother Jake spent his 20s bouncing between jobs and living at home, I worked 2 jobs through college, graduated debt-free, and built a successful marketing career. But there was one thing that made me truly proud. I was the family's holiday coordinator. Every Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, and birthday, I was the one who made magic happen. I'd spend weeks planning menus, coordinating schedules, and most importantly, shopping for the perfect gifts. Not just any gifts. I kept detailed notes about everyone's interests, sizes, and wishes. My parents always got something meaningful. My brother Jake received expensive electronics he couldn't afford. My sister-in-law Emma got designer accessories she'd mentioned wanting. Last year alone, I spent over $2,000 on Christmas gifts. I bought my dad the vintage baseball cards he'd been searching for online. My mom received a beautiful jewelry box with her initials engraved, plus a matching necklace. Jake got the latest gaming console, and Emma received a designer purse she'd been admiring for months. The thing is, I never expected anything expensive in return. My family wasn't wealthy, and I understood that. What mattered to me was seeing their faces light up, hearing their excitement, knowing that my efforts made them happy. My gifts from them were usually practical. Socks, generic gift cards, sometimes a homemade item. And that was perfectly fine with me. But over the past 2 years, I started noticing subtle changes. Family gatherings felt different. Conversations would stop when I entered the room. Jake and Emma would exchange glances when they thought I wasn't looking. My parents seemed distracted during our holiday celebrations, like they were somewhere else mentally. I chalked it up to everyone getting older, having their own lives and responsibilities. Jake had finally gotten a steady job, and Emma was pregnant with their first child. Maybe they were just stressed about becoming parents. Then came November 2024. I was already deep into my Christmas planning, creating my usual spreadsheet of gifts, budget, and timeline. I called my mom to discuss our Christmas Eve dinner plans, a tradition we'd maintained for over a decade. "Mom, I was thinking we could try that new recipe for glazed ham this year, and I found the most amazing gifts for everyone. I got Dad a first edition of his favorite mystery novel, and—" "Sarah, honey, we need to talk," my mom interrupted, her voice unusually serious. My stomach dropped. In my family, "we need to talk" was never good news. "What's wrong? Is someone sick?" "No, nothing like that. It's just, well, your father and I have been discussing this, and we've decided we're not going to celebrate holidays anymore." I literally felt the air leave my lungs. "What do you mean?" "It's just become too much. The stress, the expense, the pressure to make everything perfect. We're getting older, Sarah. We want to simplify our lives." Jake and Emma agree. They think it's a good idea too. I was speechless. 7 years of traditions, memories, joy, all ending with a single phone call. But what about Christmas morning? What about our Christmas Eve dinner? What about the kids when they're born? Don't you want them to have holiday memories? We'll still spend time together, just not with all the commercial nonsense. No gifts, no big dinners, no stress, Just simple family time. My voice was shaking now. Mom, I don't understand. I handle all the planning. I buy all the gifts. You don't have any stress or expense. Sarah, that's exactly the problem. You spend too much money on us. It makes us uncomfortable. We feel guilty that we can't reciprocate at the same level. I felt like I'd been slapped. All these years, I thought I was showing love. Instead, I was making them feel guilty. I never expected you to spend as much as me. I do it because I want to, because I love you all. We know, sweetheart, but it's our decision. We've already talked to Jake and Emma, and they support it completely. After I hung up, I cried for an hour, but then I did what I always do. I respected their decision. I canceled my gift orders, withdrew from our family group chat where we usually coordinated holiday plans, and made alternative arrangements for Christmas. I volunteered at a local shelter, thinking maybe I could spread some holiday cheer to people who really needed it. It hurt. It hurt more than I expected. But I told myself this was what they wanted, and I had to respect that. For 3 months, I stayed away from family gatherings. I sent polite texts declining invitations to casual dinners, explaining that I was giving them the space they'd requested. I threw myself into work and my volunteer activities. But then, on a quiet Sunday morning in March, I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw something that made my blood run cold. Emma had posted a photo from what was clearly a massive family celebration. The photo was from February 14th, Valentine's Day. Emma had posted it with the caption, "Best Valentine's celebration ever. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for hosting such an amazing dinner party." I stared at the image, my hands trembling. There was my entire family around my parents' dining room table, which was set with the good china, fancy decorations, roses, and what looked like expensive catered food. Jake was holding up a bottle of champagne. Emma was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, clearly new and expensive. My parents were beaming. But what made me physically nauseous were the gift bags. Lots of them. Scattered around the table, clearly opened, with tissue paper everywhere. They hadn't stopped celebrating holidays. They had stopped including me. I screenshot the photo immediately. Though my hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped my phone. Then I went through Emma's Instagram more carefully. What I found made me feel sick. December 26th. A photo of Jake opening what looked like a very expensive watch. Caption: Jake loved his Christmas surprise. Thanks, Mom and Dad. January 15th. Emma showing off a designer handbag. Caption: Early birthday gift from the best in-laws ever. They know me so well. March 3rd. A family photo from what was clearly my mom's birthday party. Caption: Celebrating the best mother-in-law with dinner at Romano's. She deserves the world. Romano's. That was the most expensive restaurant in our city. A place I'd suggested for family celebrations multiple times, only to be told it was too fancy and unnecessary. I felt like I was going to throw up. For 4 months, I had respected their decision to stop celebrating holidays. I had stayed away, given them space, even felt guilty about my previous gift giving. Meanwhile, they had been celebrating everything, just without me. But why? What had I done wrong? I started thinking back to our last few family gatherings before the phone call. Had I missed something? Had I offended someone? Had I been too generous with gifts, making them uncomfortable as my mom claimed? Then I remembered something that made my stomach drop even further. Last Christmas, when I gave Jake the gaming console, I had made a comment about how it was an investment in our future gaming sessions together. I was excited about the games we could play as a family. Jake had looked uncomfortable and said, "Sarah, you don't need to spend this much on me. I'm not a kid anymore." Emma had added, "Yeah, it's kind of much. We appreciate it, but..." I had been embarrassed and hurt, but I'd laughed it off, saying I enjoyed spoiling my little brother. Now I was wondering if that comment had triggered something. Had they decided I was showing off? Being condescending? Trying to buy their affection? But even if that were true, why lie about stopping holiday celebrations entirely? Why not just ask me to tone down the gifts? I spent the entire day going through social media with a sick feeling in my stomach. I found more evidence. A Facebook post from my dad about a wonderful family dinner in January. A photo on my mom's Facebook of her and Emma shopping together, with several shopping bags captioned, "Girls' Day Out." Emma found the perfect dress for our dinner party. They weren't just celebrating without me. They were actively spending money on celebrations while telling me that expense was the reason they couldn't celebrate anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every conversation, every interaction, looking for clues about when they had decided to exclude me. The next morning, I called my best friend Rachel, who had known my family for years. "Rachel, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course. What's going on?" I told her everything. The phone call, the Instagram photos, the lies, the exclusion. When I finished, there was a long silence. "Sarah, I hate to say this, but I'm not entirely surprised." My heart sank. "What do you mean?" "I've noticed things when I've been around your family. The way they talk about your success, your job, your generosity. There's always been this undertone." "What kind of undertone?" "Like they resent it. Not your success exactly, but the way it makes them feel about themselves. When you give expensive gifts, when you pay for dinners, when you organize everything, it highlights the fact that you're in a different financial position than they are." "But I never flaunted anything. I never made them feel bad about money." "I know you didn't intend to, but think about it from their perspective. Jake is 25 and just got his first real job. Your parents are on a fixed income. Emma comes from a family that struggles financially. Then there's you, successful, generous, always putting together these elaborate celebrations that cost more than they make in a month. So they decided to punish me for being successful. I think they decided to protect their own feelings. It's easier to exclude you than to feel inadequate every holiday." Rachel's words hit me like a truck. All these years, I thought I was being loving and generous. Instead, I had been inadvertently making my family feel bad about themselves. But that still didn't excuse the lying. If they had talked to me, explained how they felt, we could have found a solution. Instead, they chose deception and exclusion. As I hung up with Rachel, one thought kept running through my mind. If they could lie to me so easily about something this important, what else had they been lying about? That's when I decided to find out the truth. All of it. I spent the next 2 weeks becoming a detective in my own family's life, not because I wanted to spy, but because I needed to understand the full scope of what they'd been hiding from me. What I discovered was so much worse than I had imagined. First, I went through every social media account I could access. My parents weren't heavy social media users, but Emma and Jake posted regularly. By carefully scrolling through months of posts, I found a pattern that made me sick. They hadn't just excluded me from recent celebrations. They had been planning a separate family social life for over a year. August 2023, Emma posted photos from a family beach trip. Jake, Emma, my parents, and even Emma's parents were there. The caption read, "Best family vacation ever. Sometimes, the best trips are the spontaneous ones." I had never heard about this trip. When I'd asked my family about their summer plans, my mom had said they were just staying home, nothing exciting. October 2023. Multiple photos from what was clearly a surprise party for Jake's 25th birthday. My parents' house was decorated. There was a professional-looking cake, and several family friends I recognized were there. I had called Jake on his birthday. He'd thanked me for the gift card I'd sent and mentioned he was just having a quiet day. When I offered to take him to dinner that weekend, He'd said he was too busy with work. November 2023. Photos from what looked like a Thanksgiving celebration. Not just my immediate family, but aunts, uncles, and cousins I hadn't seen in years. The table was set for at least 15 people. When I'd asked about Thanksgiving plans, my mom had said they were keeping it simple this year and suggested I make my own plans since they wouldn't be doing anything special. The lies went back over a year. This wasn't a recent decision to exclude me. It was a calculated, long-term deception. But the worst discovery was yet to come. I found a Facebook post from my cousin Michelle from December 2023. She had tagged my parents and Jake in a photo of what was clearly a Christmas party at my parents' house. The caption read, "Thanks for hosting such a wonderful Christmas celebration. The kids had a blast and dinner was incredible. Can't wait for next year." I stared at the photo for a long time. This was from the same weekend I had been at my parents' house, helping my mom prepare for our Christmas celebration. While I was in the kitchen making cookies for our family dinner, they had been planning a separate party for the next day, a party I wasn't invited to. I remember that weekend clearly now. I had stayed overnight to help with preparations. The next morning, my mom had seemed eager for me to leave, saying she had errands to run, and the house was too chaotic for me to stick around. I had left by 10 a.m., feeling slightly hurt by how quickly she'd ushered me out. Now I knew why. They needed me gone so they could set up for the real celebration. The realization hit me like a physical blow. While I was at home alone, thinking about how grateful I was for our family time, they were having a party with extended family and friends, people who apparently mattered more than I did. But I still needed to understand why. What had I done to deserve this treatment? I decided to reach out to my cousin Michelle directly. We'd always had a good relationship, and she might give me honest answers. I sent her a casual message. "Hey Michelle, I saw your photos from Christmas at Mom and Dad's house. Looked like fun. I can't believe I missed it." Her response came quickly. "Oh Sarah, I was wondering where you were. Your parents said you were too busy with work to join us. We missed you." Too busy with work. Another lie. I had specifically cleared my schedule for family time during the holidays. I pressed gently. "That's weird. I don't remember being too busy." Did they mention anything else about why I wasn't there? There was a long pause before she responded. "I probably shouldn't say anything, but your mom mentioned that you've been going through a difficult time lately and needed some space from family gatherings. She said you'd been feeling overwhelmed by all the holiday planning and expenses." I read her message 3 times before. The full impact hit me. They hadn't just excluded me, they had created a narrative where I was the problem, where I was the one who couldn't handle family celebrations, where I was the one who needed space. They had turned my generosity into a character flaw and used it as justification for their deception. But the most crushing realization was still coming. That evening, I decided to call my Aunt Linda, my mom's sister, who I'd seen in several of the photos. Linda had always been direct with me, and I hoped she'd give me straight answers. "Aunt Linda, can I ask you something? I've been seeing photos from family gatherings I wasn't invited to, and I'm trying to understand what happened." There was an uncomfortable silence before she sighed deeply. "Sarah, honey, I was wondering when you'd figure it out. I've been telling your mother this was wrong from the beginning." What exactly has been wrong? The way they've been handling the situation. With you. Look, I understand their perspective. They felt uncomfortable with how much you spend on everyone, and they were tired of feeling like they couldn't keep up. But lying to you and excluding you wasn't the answer. How long has this been going on? The conversations about you started maybe 2 years ago. Jake and Emma would complain that your gifts made them look bad to each other's families. Your parents felt guilty that they couldn't reciprocate. But instead of talking to you about it, they started planning gatherings without you. 2 years, my voice cracked. They've been planning to exclude me for 2 years? Sarah, they love you. But they also resent you and they don't know how to handle that. In their minds, it was easier to create a family dynamic where they didn't have to face their own feelings of inadequacy. So they decided I was the problem. They decided your success was the problem, and unfortunately you became collateral damage. After I hung up with Linda, I sat in my car in my driveway for an hour, crying, not just because of the betrayal, but because of the realization that my own family had been discussing me, analyzing me, and ultimately deciding I was too much trouble to include in their lives. But as the tears dried, something else started building inside me. Not just hurt, but anger. And with that anger came a clarity I hadn't felt in months. They had lied to me. They had excluded me. They had created false narratives about my character and my mental state. They had let me believe I was respecting their wishes while they were living a completely different truth. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated me. They thought I would just accept their lies and fade away quietly. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. The hurt was still there, but it was now accompanied by something much more powerful: determination. I wasn't going to confront them with tears and accusations. I wasn't going to beg for inclusion or try to convince them to love me. Instead, I was going to do something much more effective. I was going to let them experience exactly what they had put me through. But first, I needed to understand the full scope of their deception. If I was going to respond to this situation, I needed all the facts. I spent the morning creating a detailed timeline. Using screenshots from social media, I documented every celebration, every lie, every excuse they had given me over the past year and a half. The pattern was clear and consistent. August 2023. Family beach trip while telling me they had no summer plans. October 2023. Jake's surprise 25th birthday party while he told me he was having a quiet day. November 2023. Large Thanksgiving celebration while telling me they were keeping it simple. December 2023. Christmas party, the day after our family celebration, while Mom rushed me out of the house. February 2024, Valentine's Day dinner with expensive gifts, while claiming they couldn't afford celebrations. March 2024, Mom's birthday dinner. At Romano's after years of claiming it was too expensive, 18 months of systematic deception. 18 months of being told I was too much, while they were spending money on the very celebrations they claimed they couldn't afford. But as I compiled this evidence, I realized something important. They weren't just lying to me about the celebrations. They were lying to me about their financial situation. My parents had always claimed they were struggling financially. For years, I had helped them with various expenses: car repairs, medical bills, home maintenance. I had paid for family dinners, covered their portion of gifts for other family members, and even helped with their mortgage payment during my dad's brief unemployment. But the photos I was seeing told a different story. Professional catering, expensive restaurants, designer gifts, elaborate decorations. This wasn't the spending pattern of people who were financially struggling. I decided to investigate further. I knew my mom used the same password for everything, something I'd helped her set up years ago for security. I accessed her shared Google Photos account, something she'd given me access to years ago when she needed help organizing pictures. What I found there was devastating. Hundreds of photos from gatherings I'd never heard about. Not just the ones Emma had posted on Instagram, but smaller dinners, shopping trips, weekend getaways. Photos of my parents taking Jake and Emma to expensive restaurants. Pictures of shopping sprees where they bought Emma maternity clothes and baby items. Images of them helping Jake furnish his apartment with new furniture. But the most painful discovery was a folder labeled Family Fun that contained photos spanning 3 years. As I scrolled through them, I could see the exact point where I stopped appearing in family photos, right around the time they started feeling uncomfortable with my gift giving. There were photos of family game nights I'd never been invited to, pictures of them helping Jake and Emma with house projects I'd never heard about. Images of family dinners at restaurants I'd suggested but been told were too expensive. They hadn't just excluded me from special occasions. They had built an entire family life that didn't include me. As I processed this information, I realized that my family's problem wasn't really with my gift giving or my success. Their problem was that my presence forced them to confront their own choices and priorities. When I was around, they felt guilty about their spending because they had always claimed they couldn't afford things. When I offered to help or pay for things, it highlighted the fact that they could afford these things. They just chose not to when I was involved. It was easier to exclude me than to admit they had been lying about their financial situation for years. But now I had a decision to make. I could confront them with all of this evidence, or I could respond in a more strategic way. That afternoon, I called my friend Rachel to talk through my options. Rachel, I need your advice on something. I've discovered that my family situation is much worse than I originally thought. I explained everything I'd found, the extent of the lies, the financial deception, the systematic exclusion. Sarah, I'm so sorry. This is absolutely horrible. What are you going to do? I'm not sure. Part of me wants to confront them directly, show them all the evidence, and demand an explanation. And the other part? The other part wants to respond, more strategically. They've spent over a year lying to me and excluding me. Maybe it's time they experienced what that feels like. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about giving them exactly what they asked for. They said they wanted to simplify their lives and stop the expensive celebrations. They said my gift giving made them uncomfortable, so maybe I should respect those wishes completely. You mean stop all contact with them? Not exactly. I mean, stop being the person they've been taking advantage of while excluding. No more helping with expenses. No more organizing family events they don't want me at anyway. No more being available whenever they need something. That sounds like boundaries, not revenge. Exactly. I'm not trying to hurt them. I'm trying to establish healthy boundaries based on their own stated preferences. But as I thought about it more, I realized I wanted to do something additional, something that would help them understand the impact of their choices without being cruel or vindictive. I decided to write them a letter, not an angry confrontation, but a clear, factual summary of what I had discovered, how it had affected me, and what my boundaries would be going forward. That evening, I sat down and wrote the most difficult letter of my life. Dear Mom, Dad, Jake, and Emma, I recently discovered through social media that you have been celebrating holidays and special occasions together, while telling me that you had decided to stop celebrating holidays because they were too stressful and expensive. I have found evidence of celebrations dating back over 18 months that I was not invited to, including family trips, birthday parties, holiday gatherings, and expensive dinners. During this same period, you allowed me to believe that I was respecting your wishes by staying away from family events. I want you to know that I understand your feelings about my gift-giving and financial contributions. I never intended to make anyone feel uncomfortable or inadequate. However, I am hurt by the choice to handle these feelings through deception and exclusion rather than honest conversation. Going forward, I will be establishing some boundaries that I believe will make everyone more comfortable. I will no longer contribute financially to family expenses, events, or gifts. This should eliminate any discomfort about financial inequality. I will no longer organize or plan family gatherings, since it appears you prefer to handle these arrangements independently. I will not be attending family events unless I receive a direct, honest invitation that acknowledges my previous exclusion and explains how things will be different going forward. I love you all, but I deserve honesty and respect in my relationships, including family relationships. I hope you can understand my position. Love, Sarah. I printed the letter and prepared to mail it to each of them individually. But before I sent it, I wanted to make sure I was prepared for their responses, because I knew that once they received This letter, everything was going to change. I mailed the letters on a Tuesday morning. I sent them certified mail to make sure each person received their copy and would have to sign for it. I wanted there to be no question that they had all received the same information at the same time. Then I waited. The first response came Thursday evening. My mom called and I could hear the panic in her voice before she even spoke. "Sarah, honey, we need to talk. I got your letter and I think there's been a misunderstanding." I took a deep breath. "What kind of misunderstanding, Mom?" "Well, you're making it sound like we deliberately excluded you, but that's not what happened. We were just trying to give you space because you seemed so stressed about holiday planning." "Mom, I have screenshots of Emma's Instagram posts from celebrations you told me weren't happening. I have photos from your Google account of family gatherings spanning 3 years. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's a pattern of deception." There was a long silence. Then, "How did you access my Google account?" "You gave me access years ago when you needed help with your photos. But that's not the point. The point is that you've been lying to me for over a year. Sarah, we never meant to hurt you. We felt like we couldn't keep up with your expectations." "What expectations?" "I never had any expectations except honesty. If you felt uncomfortable with my gift giving, you could have talked to me. Instead, you chose to lie and exclude me. We didn't know how to talk to you about it. You're so successful, so put together. We felt like we couldn't measure up." I felt my anger rising. "So, you decided the solution was to make me think I was crazy? To let me believe you had stopped celebrating holidays while you were actually celebrating without me?" "It wasn't like that, Mom, it was exactly like that. I have evidence of 18 months of lies. I respected your decision to stop celebrating holidays. I stayed away from family gatherings. I felt guilty about my gift giving because you told me it made you uncomfortable. Meanwhile, you were having parties, taking trips, and spending money on the exact celebrations you told me you couldn't afford." Another long silence. Then, in a smaller voice, "What do you want from us, Sarah?" "I want honesty. I want to be treated with respect. I want to not be excluded from my own family because my success makes you uncomfortable. We can fix this. We can invite you to the next celebration." "That's not how this works, Mom. You can't just invite me back and pretend the last 18 months didn't happen. You broke my trust. You excluded me systematically. You lied to my face repeatedly. And according to Aunt Linda, you've been discussing and analyzing me for 2 years." "You talked to Linda?" "I talked to Linda, Michelle, and several other family members trying to understand what I had done wrong. Imagine my surprise when I learned that I hadn't done anything wrong. You had just decided I was a problem to be managed rather than a family member to be included." I could hear her crying now. "Sarah, we love you. We made mistakes. But we love you. If you love me, then you'll respect the boundaries I've established. No more financial help. No more event planning. And no more pretending that your lies were somehow for my benefit." She hung up without saying goodbye. 30 minutes later, Jake called. "Sarah, Mom is really upset. Don't you think you're overreacting a little?" "Overreacting to what, Jake?" "To being systematically lied to and excluded from my own family. Look, I know we should have been more upfront with you, but you have to understand our position. Your gifts always made Emma and me feel bad. We couldn't reciprocate at that level. So, you decided to exclude me instead of having an adult conversation about it? We tried to hint at it. We told you the gifts were too much. You didn't take the hint. So your solution was to lie to me for over a year? To let me think I was respecting your wishes while you were living a completely different reality? We didn't want to hurt your feelings. But you were fine with hurting my feelings by excluding me from family events. You were fine with letting me spend holidays alone while you celebrated with everyone else? Sarah, you're being dramatic. It wasn't that many events. Jake, I have documented evidence of more than 20 family gatherings I was excluded from. Birthday parties, holidays, dinners, trips. And that's just what was posted on social media. Okay, maybe it was more than a few events. But we can fix this going forward. How? By inviting me to events when it's convenient for you? By including me when you need something? This isn't about individual events, Jake. This is about the fact that my own family decided I was too much trouble to include in their lives. You're not too much trouble. You're just a lot sometimes. I'm a lot? You know what I mean. You're always so generous, so organized, so successful. It makes the rest of us feel like we're not doing enough. So instead of dealing with your own feelings, you decided to make me the problem. That's not fair. What's not fair is lying to your sister for over a year. What's not fair is excluding me from family events while taking my money for emergencies. What's not fair is letting me think I was crazy for feeling left out. We never took your money under false pretenses. Really? Last year you needed help with your car repair, remember? I gave you $800. 2 weeks later, Emma posted photos of you guys at an expensive restaurant celebrating your work promotion. Celebration I wasn't invited to. Silence. Jake, you can't have it both ways. You can't exclude me from the family while still expecting me to be available when you need financial help. You can't lie to me about your priorities while expecting me to make you a priority. So what? You're just cutting us off completely? I'm establishing boundaries. I'm no longer available for financial emergencies from people who don't consider me important enough to include in their lives. I'm no longer organizing events for people who prefer to celebrate without me. Emma's pregnant. Sarah, we're going to need support. Then you should have thought about that before you decided to exclude me from your support system. He hung up. 2 hours later, Emma called. She was crying before she even spoke. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I never wanted things to go this far. What did you want, Emma? I felt so bad about the gifts you gave us. My family doesn't have money. And when I'd show them the expensive things you bought me, they'd make comments about how I was lucky to marry into a wealthy family. It made me feel weird. So you decided to exclude me instead of explaining that to me? I didn't know how to say it without sounding ungrateful. And Jake felt the same way. We talked to your parents about it, and they suggested we just tone down the celebrations when you were around. Tone down the celebrations? Emma, you didn't tone them down. You eliminated me from them. It started small. We'd have a simple dinner when you were there, then maybe do something bigger the next day. But then it became easier to just not include you in the planning. For 18 months, Emma. This wasn't a few isolated incidents. I know it got out of hand, but I'm pregnant now, and I want our baby to know their Aunt Sarah. Can't we start over? Starting over requires acknowledging what happened and making real changes. It requires honesty about why you made these choices and what you're going to do differently. I just told you why we made these choices. No, you told me you felt uncomfortable with my gifts. But that doesn't explain why you participated in lying to me, excluding me, and allowing me to think I was crazy for feeling left out. That doesn't explain why you posted photos of family celebrations on social media knowing I could see them. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, I guess I didn't think about how it would affect you. I was just focused on how it made me feel. That's the problem, Emma. None of you thought about how your choices would affect me. You thought about your own comfort, your own feelings, your own convenience. I was just collateral damage in your plan to feel better about yourselves. Sarah, please. I'm pregnant and emotional, and this whole situation is stressing me out. Can't we just move forward? Emma, being pregnant doesn't excuse 18 months of lies and exclusion, and I'm not responsible for managing your stress about the consequences of your choices. You're being really harsh. I'm being honest. Something none of you were willing to do with me. She hung up too. The final call came from my dad on Sunday morning. Sarah, this needs to stop. You're tearing this family apart. I'm tearing the family apart. Dad, I'm responding to being systematically excluded from this family. You're overreacting. Families have problems. We work through them. Families also have honesty and respect. When did we stop having those things? We've always respected you. Really? Is lying to me for 18 months respectful? Is excluding me from family events respectful? Is taking my money while excluding me from my own family respectful? You offered that money freely. I offered it to family members who I thought valued me as more than a bank account. That's not fair. What's not fair is that I spent 2 years thinking I was too sensitive, too needy, too much. What's not fair is that I blamed myself for feeling excluded when I was actually being excluded. What's not fair is that my own family made me feel crazy for noticing their lies. We never meant for you to feel that way. But you never cared enough to find out how I was feeling. You never checked in on me during the holidays I spent alone. You never wondered if I was okay when I stopped attending family gatherings. You were too busy enjoying your celebrations without me. There was a long pause. Then, in a voice I'd never heard from my father, "What do you want from us, Sarah?" I want acknowledgement of what happened. I want a real apology that doesn't minimize your choices or blame me for your feelings. I want assurance that this pattern of deception and exclusion will never happen again. And I want time to rebuild trust that you've completely destroyed. And if we do all that, then maybe we can start having a real relationship again. But Dad, I'm not going back to the way things were. I'm not going back to being your financial safety net while being excluded from your emotional lives. I'm not going back to organizing celebrations for people who prefer to celebrate without me. You're punishing us. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. After I hung up, I realized something had shifted. The hurt was still there, but it was no longer overwhelming. The anger was still there, but it was now focused and purposeful. For the first time in months, I felt like I had some control over my situation. But what happened next would show me just how little my family understood about the damage they had done. The response to my letters revealed everything I needed to know about my family's character. Instead of reflection or genuine apology, I got deflection, minimization, and manipulation. But the real revelation came 2 weeks later when I received a call from Aunt Linda. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. Your mother called me yesterday, very upset about your letter." "What did she say?" "She wanted me to talk to you about being more understanding of their position. She said you were being dramatic and holding grudges." I wasn't surprised, but it still stung. "What did you tell her?" I told her that I'd been warning them for months that this was going to blow up in their faces. I told her that lying to you was wrong, and excluding you was worse. How did she respond to that? She said something that made me realize how deep their self-deception goes. She said, we were protecting Sarah's feelings. She was always so stressed about making holidays perfect. I laughed bitterly. I was stressed about making holidays perfect because I wanted everyone to be happy. I was trying to create good memories for my family. I know that. But Sarah, there's something else you need to know. After I refused to talk sense into you, your mother called several other family members asking them to intervene. Who? Your cousin Michelle, Uncle Robert, even your grandmother. My heart sank. She called. Grandma, she told your grandmother that you were having some kind of breakdown over the holidays and that you were trying to turn the family against them. I felt sick. My 85-year-old grandmother, who I called every week and visited monthly, was now being told I was mentally unstable. Linda, what exactly did she tell Grandma? She said you were angry about missing some family gatherings and that you were threatening to cut everyone off unless they agreed to your demands. My demands? You mean my request for honesty and basic respect? Sarah, your grandmother is very confused and worried about you. She asked me if she should call you to help you through this difficult time. I was furious. It was one thing for my parents to manipulate the narrative with other family members, but involving my elderly grandmother, making her worry about my mental health, was a new low. Linda, I need to ask you a favor. Can you make sure Grandma knows the truth about what happened? I already did. I showed her some of the social media posts you mentioned. She was not happy with your parents. What did she say? She said, "In my day, we didn't lie to family members to spare their feelings. We told the truth and dealt with the consequences." Despite everything, I smiled. Grandma had always been direct, but the family manipulation campaign was just beginning. Over the next few days, I received calls from several relatives, all with similar messages. Your parents are really hurt. Family is more important than holding grudges. Maybe you're being a little harsh. It became clear that my parents had launched a full-scale effort to reframe the narrative. I wasn't a daughter who had been systematically lied to and excluded. I was a dramatic, unstable person who was tearing the family apart over minor misunderstandings. The breaking point came when Jake showed up at my apartment unannounced on a Saturday morning. "Sarah, we need to talk. This has gone too far." "What? Has gone too far, Jake? You're destroying this family. Mom has been crying for days. Emma is so stressed she can barely eat. Dad isn't sleeping. I'm destroying the family? I'm not the one who lied for 18 months. Okay, we made mistakes. But you're making everything worse by being so stubborn about this." "Stubborn about what? About expecting honesty from my family? You're expecting perfection. People make mistakes." "Jake, this wasn't a mistake. This was a deliberate, sustained pattern of deception. You didn't accidentally exclude me from 20 family gatherings. Fine, it was deliberate, but we can fix it going forward." "How? By pretending it never happened? By going back to the way things were? Why can't we just move forward? Why do you have to punish everyone?" I stared at him for a long moment. "Jake, do you understand what you did to me? We excluded you from some family events. It was wrong, but it's not the end of the world. You made me question my own sanity. You let me think I was being too sensitive when I felt left out. You took my money while excluding me from your lives. You involved other family members in lies about my mental state. You created an entire narrative where I was the problem, when the actual problem was that my success made you uncomfortable. You are successful, Sarah. You make more money than all of us combined. You can afford expensive gifts and elaborate celebrations. We can't. That's not our fault. And it's not my fault either. But instead of dealing with your feelings about that, you decided to punish me for it. We didn't punish you. We just created some space. You created space by lying to me and excluding me. There's a difference between needing space and being deliberately deceptive. Okay, so we lied. But we can't change that now. What do you want us to do? I realized in that moment that Jake genuinely didn't understand the gravity of what they had done. To him, this was a minor family squabble that could be resolved by moving forward and forgetting about it. Jake, I want you to understand that your actions have consequences. You can't systematically exclude someone from your life and then expect them to be available when it's convenient for you. So you're cutting us off? I'm establishing boundaries. I'm no longer available to be your family's financial support while being excluded from your emotional support. I'm no longer organizing events for people who prefer to celebrate without me. What about when the baby comes? What about it? Emma wants you to be the godmother. I almost laughed. Jake, you and Emma excluded me from your lives for 18 months, and now you want me to commit to being responsible for your child? That's different. How is it different? Because you're family. I've been family this whole time. That didn't stop you from lying to me and excluding me. Sarah, please. Emma really wants this. Emma should have thought about that before she participated in 18 months of deception. You don't get to exclude someone from your life and then expect them to take on major responsibilities when it benefits you. Jake left angry, but I felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. For the first time, I was putting my own emotional well-being first. I was refusing to accept crumbs of affection from people who had shown me I wasn't a priority in their lives. The justice wasn't dramatic or vindictive. It was simply refusing to accept treatment that was beneath my worth. 6 months have passed since I sent those letters, and my life has changed in ways I never expected. The first change was the most obvious. I stopped being my family's financial safety net. Within 2 months of my boundary setting, I received 3 calls asking for emergency help. Jake needed money for car repairs. My parents needed help with a medical bill. Emma wanted money for baby furniture. Each time, I calmly reminded them that they had chosen to exclude me from their support system, so I was no longer available to be part of their financial support system either. The reactions were predictable: anger, guilt-tripping, accusations that I was being petty. But I held firm. The second change was more surprising. I started enjoying holidays again. This past Christmas, instead of spending weeks planning elaborate celebrations for people who didn't value my efforts, I volunteered at a local homeless shelter. I spent Christmas morning serving breakfast to families in need, and Christmas afternoon playing games with children who lit up when they received simple gifts. It was the most meaningful holiday I'd had in years. I also started building relationships with family members who had been excluded from my parents' inner circle. I reconnected with my cousin Michelle, who had always been kind, but had been gradually pushed out of family events as well. I discovered that my grandmother had been asking why I wasn't at family gatherings, only to be told I was too busy with work. Through these conversations, I learned that my parents had a pattern of controlling family narratives and excluding people who didn't fit their preferred dynamic. The third change was the most important. I started valuing myself the way I had been valuing others. For years, I had poured energy, money, and love into my family relationships while accepting crumbs in return. I had convinced myself that love meant giving without receiving, that family meant accepting whatever treatment was offered. Now I understand that real love requires respect, honesty, and reciprocity. Real family means being valued for who you are, not just what you can provide. I've started dating again, something I had put on hold while managing my family's emotional and financial needs. I've taken up painting, a hobby I'd abandoned because I was always too busy organizing family events. I've traveled to places I'd always wanted to see but couldn't afford because I was spending thousands on gifts for people who didn't appreciate them. About my family? 3 months ago, Emma had her baby. I sent a card and a small, appropriate gift. I didn't visit the hospital. I didn't offer to help with childcare. I didn't volunteer to organize a baby shower. Jake called to tell me I was missing out on being an aunt. I told him that I had been missing out on being a sister for 2 years, and he hadn't seemed concerned about that. My parents have made a few attempts at reconciliation, but they've all followed the same pattern, minimizing their actions, blaming me for being too sensitive, and expecting me to return to the previous dynamic without any real change on their part. I've realized that some people are more invested in being right than in being in relationship. Some people would rather lose you than admit they wronged you, and that's okay. I can't control their choices, but I can control mine. I choose honesty over peacekeeping. I choose self-respect over family approval. I choose relationships where my value is recognized over relationships where my contributions are taken for granted. The little girl who used to bend over backward for family approval has grown into a woman who knows her worth. And that's the greatest gift I could have given myself. Looking back on this journey, I've learned that setting boundaries isn't about punishment. It's about self-preservation. My family's lies and exclusion taught me that I had been accepting less than I deserved for years. The most surprising part of this experience wasn't their betrayal. It was discovering how much better my life became when I stopped trying to earn love from people who weren't willing to give it freely. I've learned that real family shows up for you consistently, not just when they need something. Real love doesn't require you to diminish yourself to make others comfortable. And real relationships can't survive on one person's effort. To anyone watching who has dealt with toxic family dynamics, you deserve better than crumbs. You deserve honesty, respect, and genuine appreciation. Don't let anyone convince you that your standards are too high when their behavior is too low. Which part of my story surprised you the most? Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who took you for granted? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding your worth and building the life you deserve.